Hello, government. This is the first of two videos that we'll be working with this week that I'll be putting together. As we kind of shift then out of looking through some Arizona history and government characteristics, and now shifting into learning and talking about political ideologies, political beliefs, and political behaviors. Now is the unit in which we kind of learn about why we think the way we do, how the ways we think can be categorized, and then once we realize the ways we think about politics, how then can we behave based off of those beliefs? How can we put those things into action? So the first video that this is the first one, is on political ideologies. Now, if you hear political ideologies and you immediately think of political parties, I'll say it this way: political parties are a smaller portion of what the bigger conversation of political ideologies are. So we're going to hold off on the political party conversation until next week a little bit more. But when we talk about political ideologies, in general, what we're talking about in American government and politics, we're talking about the ideologies of liberal and conservative. Now, just to say this, when you think liberal and conservative, think of mindset, think of like a way of thinking, a set of beliefs. Again, don't directly think of political parties yet. Now, with that, is the Democratic Party the more liberal of the two major parties in America? Yes. Is the Republican Party the more conservative of the two? Yes. But liberal ideology is not exactly what Democratic Party is. Same thing, conservative is not exactly what Republican Party is. So I just say that as a liberal and conservative are big umbrella categories that we're going to break down a little bit here. Now for this, instead of actual handwritten notes for you to take, I attached in the digital resources an infographic that's incredibly helpful and resourceful in breaking down all of the different ways these two different ideologies can show up in someone's life, in their behaviors and what they expect upbringing to look like, things like that. So I'm just going to mostly be kind of talking through that with you. Please do open that up because it's incredibly helpful towards breaking all of this down. When you are all talking about, and you've heard the ideas of being conservative or being liberal, you've probably heard it said directionally, this idea of like the left or the right. To just connect those, liberal political ideology is what we call left, conservative is what we call the right. The reasoning why we use that terminology is we think of political ideologies on a spectrum line. The more left you go is the more and more involved government is. And the more right you go is the less and less involved government is. And I do just want to say on the extremes of those two scenarios, the extreme on the left is full, complete government control and regulation of every aspect of life. And then the extreme all the way to the right is anarchy, no government, no formal law or rules. Everything is just whatever people think and say is correct or right. So they each have two extremes that aren't necessarily good or helpful. And honestly, where American liberalism and American conservatism are both still closer to the middle than they are closer to the extremes. So we live in an interesting time in which it seems like both sides don't agree on anything and yell at each other all the time. But in terms of kind of global politics, we still are each anywhere you could be within the American political spectrum still is closer to the middle than it is towards the extreme. So I'm just going to talk through each side a little bit. I'll start with the liberal or the left side and just break down some details. Like we said, we do find the Democratic Party being one of the parties within the liberal ideology. Words that you'll often hear with the liberal side would be words like liberal and progressive. You'll hear words like social progress or social equality. The ideas that fit into the liberal ideology then aren't just political ideas, they're family values too. Same with conservative, which we'll get to. So the idea of like the idea of a liberal political ideology and how it can show up in community and family life. The liberal ideology would point towards community that's based on ethics, community that's based on ways of actually acting, not necessarily like reasons for good behavior or good actions, but making things be certain ways to promote equality, to promote treatment of people according to certain kind of set ethical standards in that kind of a way. So the idea then in the adult, for like an adult raised with a liberal mindset, the liberal mindset pushes for an adult that's considered like a fulfilled adult, that's met potential. This is why the liberal mindset often is tied to political beliefs like equality of access to things, that everyone should have the same type of opportunity and access to the same services and standards, because everything is all about like potential and making sure everyone is able to have equality of potential towards then fulfilling what that potential could be. As far as then beliefs of a liberal mindset, when it comes to society, there's a great wording here in the infographic that you'll see that says the liberal mindset is all about one for all and all for one. It's this idea of everything that we vote for and we do should be based off of what's good for the overall society, etc. That all of society should be geared towards being there for the vulnerable, for the people that can't help themselves, things like that. So the liberal side, you'll see a lot more push towards equality of opportunity, equality of access, social progress, to then be able to make sure that everyone is able to fulfill potential that the liberal mindset sees them having. On the conservative side, this is where, of course, you'll find the Republican Party typically fitting within. Mostly conservative words you'd hear would be things like just traditional or built off of like the past. You'll hear the words equity more than you'll hear equality, which essentially is a way to make sure that everyone's treated fairly according to then what's set. When it comes to then, we talked about for liberal, it's a community based on ethics. The conservative mindset's a community based on morals and moral behavior. Morals are things then that are internal. It's like your internal code, your internal character. And that's a very conservative viewpoint too. This idea of a child growing up conservatively is a child that's growing to be able to build character, to then become a self-reliant adult. One that has certain traits, characteristics, skills that they've built over time to then be able to be independent, to do their own thing. So like we said, in the liberal mindset, the saying is one for all for one. The conservative mindset is much more of the way that society is to be structured. And this fits with a lot of usually the conservative push towards free market capitalism, is this idea of survival of the fittest. And that's not necessarily meaning that people then should be left behind, as much as it means that the conservative focuses much more on my individual ability to grow as a person with character and morality and hard work to become independent and self-reliant in my job, in my family, in my household, etc. This is where then we see conservatives mostly looking to uphold order, to really help people who then can help themselves, in that type of idea. So that's just kind of a general overview of liberal and conservative. Hopefully portions of this are helpful. Again, the infographic is a great resource, so please really look at that. Our next discussion video is going to be on political socialization, which is the why you think the ways that you think when it comes to politics. So that's the political ideologies, liberal, conservative. Hope that was helpful. See you guys next time.